Yeah, we definitely got time.
Yeah. I think just for shits and giggles, just gonna run, like, have you just talk about each track yourself.
That's cool.
Okay. I was just saying, because, like, it felt kind of weird, like, I was, like, the last time we talked about each song indirectly, and I just felt like I was, like, feeding you shit and be like, so here's what I think it's about. What did you think? What is it about? And you're just like...
I like that, though, because, sometimes I'll interview with people that have listened to the music but haven't given it too much thought. And it was really clear to me that you were, like, listening to it and really thinking about it, so I was pretty into that, to be honest.
It was just kind of funny, because, like, talking to my co-host, he was like, he doesn't listen to rap a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like, I've had the idea that I think it'd be fun to do, like, a Lost in Vegas kind of thing, but have him and I do it, and we just watch a whole bunch of hip-hop. But the problem is, like, I actually listen to a lot of hip-hop, so, like, it wouldn't be weird to me. Like, I don't know if the reaction would be the same as, like, those dudes being like, I've never heard of Tool. Let's listen to Tool.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it'd be a little bit harder to catch me by surprise, like, where I'm like, oh, that was cool. And then my co-host would probably be like, uh-huh. And I'm like, yeah, that was, like... It was really cool the way he, like, kind of repeated that line, and yeah, it was cool. That's a reference to this, and he's like,
yeah,
I have no frame of reference for any of this shit. So, well, we have Ray Hawthorne of North Kingsley back again to talk about North Kingsley's Volume 2, which is out now and has been out for 10 days as of when we're talking. I guess that would almost be a week and a half at this point. It still fucks me up that shit comes out on Fridays, because like my wife was talking just as we were coming. I guess there's some documentary series or whatever getting ready to come out on Netflix, talking I think about songwriters. I don't know if they're ghostwriters necessarily or what it is. I think God, I don't even remember what the show was that she said. It was something horrible, like Music Exploder or something like that.
Okay.
Something terrible sounding.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that at all.
But apparently it's talking with people who have written with, like, Nine Inch Nails, Dua Lipa, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, kind of a broad spectrum of artists. But all of that said, you haven't been on in 4 months, and it seems like we were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for this Volume 2 to come out. I thought these were going to come a little more rapid fire. So how does it feel to get Part 2 out now that everyone's kind of been very familiar with Part 1, Volume 1?
So I'm really excited about it, and you definitely hit the nail on the head. We were gonna release it a little bit earlier, but there was a bunch of world events and other outside things that sort of stopped us from that, just like with Volume 1. So this seems to just be like a theme for North Kingsley releases at this point. But I'm excited to have it out because I think I said this last time. We've got Volume 1 through 4 already done.
Right.
So I'm looking at them as, like, I love Volume 1, but I'm looking at it like, oh man, there's some real bangers on Volume 2 though. And even right now I'm like, I really want that shit from Volume 3 to come out. You know what I mean? So I'm just excited for things to come out. And I think it worked out in our favor that we waited a little bit longer to put out Volume 2 than we would have, just because, like you said, people are more familiar with Volume 1 now, and it gave time for our fan base to grow a little bit and sort of expect the new things. And so far, I mean, I've seen pretty much nothing but positive reactions about Volume 2, which makes me really excited because it's in a little bit of a different lane than the first one.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the interesting thing is, and I know we talked initially, I had asked, like, is each volume kind of creating a certain vibe, and that's why those tracks are together. And this one, not saying that there isn't a kind of hip-hop influence on the first one, but this feels really hip-hop heavy. Like, I mean, yes, you can kind of hear Chavo's bass playing, but whereas I thought Chavo was playing guitar previously on the other stuff, this is clearly kind of a more, for lack of a better term, a drum and bass kind of sound, like a traditional instrumentation for hip hop to kind of go over. So, which makes sense, obviously. We had kind of joked initially, when I was saying, I heard some strong Wu Tang references kind of on the first one. And now here we are, first song out the gate, False Idols, and you got RZA. Like, did you feel like you had to really step your weight up and kind of earn your bars to go side by side with RZA? Like, how was that for you?
That was something, man. And it's funny when we did the first interview and you brought up the Wu Tang thing, like, all I wanted to say was, like, we got RZA on Volume 2. You know what I mean? And I did it. It was the idea of having RZA on a song was sort of intimidating in general as like a new rapper, right? Because that's that's a huge deal. I mean, he's arguably one of the biggest rappers that will ever be. So that's a big cosign to have of someone saying like, you know, this guy's good enough for me to get on a song with. And he came into the studio that night, and we were initially going to put him on, I think it was a different song we were going to put him on initially, but we were going through songs and just sort of listening to what we have, and he heard False Idols, and he was like, I want to get on that one. He's like, I got something for this. I want to get on that. And it was just like mind-blowing to see him take something that he was sort of working with, fit it into the concept that we were working on already, and just put that whole thing together. I think it's I'm super excited about the fact that I already had written False Idols before RZA got on it, because I think it would have been way more intimidating to have like just a blank slate with a RZA verse and feel like I really have to compete with him. Whereas he heard this song, he was like, I really fuck with this. And then we just moved forward from there, which made me feel a whole lot better. Pretty much all I did was cut one of my verses out, put RZA in there. And I think what I ended up doing was the second verse where he came in, I ended up just making that my first verse. I think I axed the first verse. I haven't heard the original version in so long, but that's all that it was. But I mean, that was an insane thing to do. I think I've talked about this before, but I started rapping as a joke, just a complete joke. So to be working with Chavo is crazy, but like to have one of the biggest rappers that there's ever going to be come in and rap alongside you makes me feel like, wow, never expected this. Never expected this at all. So it's exciting, man. It was intimidating, but luckily I had the song already. That's my long-winded answer for that.
I just feel like in this day and age, it's not very often that, you know, almost kind of right out the gate, there's kind of that immediate cosign. And that's, I mean, it's a big thing in music in general. I mean, you know, you see a lot of, like, we'll call them legacy bands. You know, the big cosign is like, you know, like when Code Orange gets taken out by Slipknot or Korn or, you know, some of these things. Yep. You know, you see it sporadically, but, you know, it's still huge. But in hip hop, it's even bigger. I mean, you know, I can think of, you know, I remember Ja Rule basically getting that cosign from Jay-Z on Can I Get A? And, you know, that was on, like, the Rush Hour soundtrack. It was a fucking monster song. And for that to basically be his first taste to the mainstream before he puts out his, you know, solo record, his first one, it's like, that was huge. And then you kind of see, like, you know, along the way of, like, you know, what Biggie obviously did with Junior Mafia, even going to... I mean, shit, really. Like, there's just so many. Like I said, it's a big cosign thing, and it's one of those where that side of the industry, I think, has always been very supportive of young talent. Doesn't always work out. I mean, you kind of look at Memphis Bleak, like, that dude was poised to just be the next big fucking thing and never really took off for a lot of reasons. But, you know, it's sometimes one of those where I think maybe the expectation is too great for some of the artists to rise to the top. And, you know, that was kind of something in listening to this track that was really cool. And I mean, you already answered it in the fact that your part was already done. So I didn't know if you guys had written together to make sure your verses kind of worked, or like how that really panned out. But yeah, I think I would have been shitting bricks too if I had to like come up with a whole new song basically to work around what RZA's lyrical idea was.
For sure. I mean, I remember when he was recording it and we were in the studio, I don't remember exactly what the bar was, but he said some bar, and it's the first time I'm hearing it is when he's doing his initial take, you know? And there was a couple other people in the studio that night. And he said some bar, and I just flipped. I was like, what? And I like looked over at and they're just sitting there like real calm and shit. And, you know, they're just like super. I'm like, how are you not excited right now? You hear what this guy just said? You know? So it was really surreal. It took a lot not to just like fan out a little bit, you know?
With something like that, because, you know, I'm thinking kind of a little bit more how, you know, like Dr. Dre on, at least I can say on his last two records, is really a big proponent of kind of having it be a feature-heavy collaborative process. You know, I think like hands down on Chronic 2001, I think Eminem stole the show on the two tracks he was on, obviously.
He makes that album.
Right. And then I think Kendrick really kind of played that role on the last record that Dr. Dre put out. But, he kind of, like I said, likes to bring kind of new people in. Has there kind of either been talks of now that you've kind of done something with Risen and the expansive nature of what he does in a production kind of role, to where maybe you're going to kind of get more looks to do some other stuff outside of North Kingsley now because of this track, because of this collaborative endeavor, or has this, maybe from Volume 1 kind of having the success it's had, has it opened you up to just being able to do more with other people that you maybe never would have thought would have happened when starting this project?
So yeah, it's there's been a lot more looks from higher up people than I ever expected to get. And there's been a good amount of talks of featuring on certain people's records. But the thing is, at this point, I really want to do that, but also it has to be the right fit for what we're doing right now. You know what I mean?
For North Kingsley, that is?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
There's a ton of up and coming rappers right now who just sort of want to work with anybody, and I'm in the same boat. Like, I want to work with anybody, but I don't want it to be something that is just so far out of left field from what we're establishing as North Kingsley right now. So I'm way open to features. I just don't want to be on features with people whose songs are very like lyrically bereft. I'm trying not to talk shit on people, but like, there's just a lot of this just auto-tune rap stuff that I'm just not into, and
you need some more face tattoos for that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to establish something with North Kingsley where it's just something that is different than what you're generally hearing from rap right now all across the board, whether it's how the beats work or the fact that we're trying to do actual lyricism as opposed to just going like, yeah, on a beat for fucking 3 minutes, which, much to our chagrin, it's a little bit more, it would be so easy to just come out and go, yeah, on a beat for 4 minutes. And I bet you North Kingsley could be a bigger band, but we don't really stand for that. You know what I mean? I heard a very good comparison recently where someone's saying that rap today is a lot like, hair metal in like the late 80s. And we're just sort of waiting for Nirvana to come out. And I'm really just trying to like get into that next wave before the curve type thing. So that was another long-winded answer, but yeah, there's a lot of looks for features, and we're definitely we've got some interesting features coming up that I'm excited about. But as far as me doing features on other people's stuff, we've talked about it. There's some people that I am excited to work with, but it is just like sort of up in the air on when we're actually going to do that or when we would actually release those things versus what North Kingsley's doing right now. I hope that's that feels like a whole lot of words that's confusing.
No, I mean, I think that's the thing sometimes. There was a friend's band and they wanted me to kind of basically assume a managerial role. And, I kind of had to ask first, and I think this kind of speaks to a larger music business side of things that, I've not really talked about on this show, but I think kind of for those maybe that are in a up-and-coming band or kind of trying to get to a certain level, I think some of these conversations are good to have so people can kind of hear different perspectives on what's working or what they're trying to do. But, something I had kind of said to this person, and I was like, well, what do you want me to do? When you say you want a manager, what does a manager do to you? And he was like, well, help us with shows and do this. And I was like, well, that's a booking agent, not a manager. And then he's like, well, and then, you can come out on the road with us because, like, you used to book shows, you know how to settle them, you know how to do all this kind of stuff, you know how to handle TM, so you could be a TM. And I was like, that's a TM, not a manager. So, yeah. As you kind of start talking to people, you realize that there are different facets within this thing, and you kind of need a singular vision of what you're trying to do, reach these certain goals and so forth, and trying to help someone who doesn't really know where they even want to go or how they even want to get there kind of makes it a little hard to kind of jump in and try to be a manager of sorts. And so, something I was kind of thinking of, in preparation for this chat, and I had just recently gone through and watched Entourage again, the whole series, and I was kind of wondering if potentially North Kingsley, if you guys are looking at this project also as sort of a, where you kind of are a group, Like if you want us to kind of do something from a production side, you got, you know, Shabo and Soren?
Sorrow.
Sorry.
Okay.
You always make fun of him and call him different shit, so I'm always like, what is his name again?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, and then you as kind of the lyricist and so forth, it kind of reminds me of like Ari, you know, E and Vince. It's kind of the team that kind of, you know, you got your agent, you got your manager, and you got your talent. And it's one of those where, you know, in the middle of that seat in the show where they basically, you know, the Median team, you know, it's Billy Walsh and you and da-da-da, and we're doing all these things and we're selling movies based on this package. Is that happening with you guys with what you're doing? Like, are you guys kind of becoming a production kind of all-in-one entity as well as being a band?
I would like to think so, because we, in a similar vein to what I just said before, there's people who want to work with us as a full group. And in any way that any discussion that I've had about doing features with people, I've been very adamant about I want it to say featuring North Kingsley. Gotcha. I don't want it to say feature, you know what I mean? I don't want it to say featuring Ray Hawthorne. I want it to say featuring North Kingsley. I think anything that I'm doing right now is in interest of elevating the band. And hopefully, along with saying featuring North Kingsley, that would mean we could get Shavo involved in some way, and we could get Sorrow involved in some way. But let's say in a worst case scenario, it was just me doing a vocal line, I still just wanted to say featuring North Kingsley. And I think the fact that the three of us have a similar mindset of just we all want to elevate each other and we all want to work well together, because let's face it, that's what works for us. You know, the three of us have talked about this, but it's like the three of us individually could make music completely solo. We could make music by ourselves. It wouldn't be an issue, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as good what we're doing right now. At least we don't think so. So I'm very adamant about us having that team mentality and sticking together. So the Entourage thing is actually pretty apt comparison. I haven't watched that in years, but that works out pretty well.
Well, the pandemic has kind of caused us to go back and watch some of the old shows, and that was one of the ones that we just, I mean, I think my wife and I plowed through it in like a week, the whole thing and the movie.
I never saw the movie, but I did see the whole show.
Movie's pretty good. It sounds like, according to some of the people I follow on Instagram that were in that show, it sounds like they might be doing a reboot with all the original cast and just kind of picking back up.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. But, you know, it's just kind of interesting because it's like, you know, you look at, you know, it's kind of hard, especially now with this record, it's kind of hard not to make comparisons to Wu Tang and stuff like that. But, I mean, you go back to a lot of the classic hip-hop, and that's sort of what it always kind of seemed to be is, yes, like, RZA is the mastermind, he produces and does all these things, but it was always kind of under this umbrella of Wu-Tang. Like, yes, RZA produces, but, you know, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this, you know, I'm going to produce Liquid Swords. I'm going to go ahead and do this Method Man record. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then we're going to come back together. We're going to do a Wu-Tang record. And it elevates the whole while also kind of elevating the individuals in that kind of regard. So it's just one of those that, as I kind of thought about it, it's like you all do such a unique thing within what North Kingsley is that I could kind of see it being shopped sort of as a group, literally, from more of kind of ghostwriting or songwriting with other artists and so forth, and kind of being like, yo, if you would like to do something like this, these are the kind of things we can offer and do for you. But it's not something, like I said, it's not something that we typically talk about, this ancillary avenue of basically writing songs for other people, or with other people.
I would love to write for other people. I think that was always a big dream of mine. I always looked at sort of the Pharrell angle of things, where I was like, I super respect how Pharrell has the ability to be an artist himself, and you know, with NERD and all that.
I was gonna say, it's so weird though, since he is an individual in any aside from NERD plus himself, and then as his own solo artist,
huge producer, you know what I mean? And that's obviously like, that's a extreme high mark to hit. I mean, there's really only one Pharrell, but that lane of something would be something that I was super interested in, because I write songs all the time. I know the other guys do too. I know Shavo's writing all the time. Sorrow's writing all the time. It's not always necessarily something that fits in what we've established North Kingsley as. You know, I think I could write some pretty good pop records, you know, that I think would be a smart move, not only from a business standpoint, but just from as a creative outlet. I think we talked about before, but it was before I was ever doing anything hip hop oriented. I was doing a lot of like hardcore stuff. I was doing a lot of even just solo, like acoustic pop stuff. Basically any kind of music I can get my hands on, I really enjoy making as long as I like it, and I would like to do that. So the idea of ghostwriting and songwriting, I think for us as a band is something we'd love to explore. And it's even something we talked about in the very initial stages of North Kingsley, like 2.5 years ago at this point, when we were sort of figuring out what we were doing. There was a lot of discussion of us just sort of being a production unit like that. There was all this weird semantics where like we couldn't call ourselves a band at the time, all this like strange shit. It was like, we're a group, we're a unit, like all this weird shit where one day I was like, we're a band, just that's what we are. But that was sort of the initial idea, was that we would make songs for ourselves and we would make songs for other people. The comparison being at the time that Chavo was using was like sort of like a heavier Chainsmokers, I think was what he was. So yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. That's definitely something we'd be interested in, and something I'm sure we'll explore more in the future. But as of right now, I think we need to build up the profile of North Kingsley as a group before that we could do that super effectively,
Yeah, it's just always funny because sometimes you see some of these things and it's like, there's NERD, and you're like, okay, well, isn't that just Neptunes? Like it was just like, I remember like when the first NERD record came out, I was just like, well, I thought this was just Neptunes, so why is it this whole other moniker? And it just kind of becomes this thing where there is sometimes a lot of separation sometimes of the entities in a weird, interesting way. Like it's kind of funny, and I'm totally blanking now on it, and I had the reference and then I just totally lost it. But I was gonna say, yeah, I totally lost it, so it doesn't fucking matter.
It happens.
Yeah. The other thing too, and I couldn't help but think it was kind of funny. So, obviously we were kind of talking about how each of these, at least for the 2 songs or 2 volumes you have currently, it's 3-song EP that makes up each volume currently. I don't know if that's going to continue moving forward, but were these 3 songs, I don't even remember if I asked this last time, are basically, because you say you have 4 volumes already done, so were you writing these all together in one chunk of time, or was like the first three you did, then these are the next 3 you did, and then so on and so forth?
So in volume 1, those were some of our earlier songs.
Okay.
But there was never really a goal of putting together individual volumes during the songwriting process.
Okay.
So we've got volume 1 through 4 ready, but by no exaggeration, over the last 2.5 years, we've recorded something like 70 or 80 songs. So the ones that we're releasing are ones that from that huge batch that, work well together and that are good enough that we like. Like there's a whole checklist of things that we have to go through before we even move forward with a song. I think I personally think there's songs that we've scrapped that are great songs that maybe one day they'll come out, but we sort of look at the songs once we have them and then say, these 3 will work together. These 3 will work together. Because we all spend a ton of time writing. In fact, Like That and False Idols. So Like That's on volume 1 and False Idols on volume 2. I think I wrote those within like 2 days of one another.
Oh, okay.
I had gotten into this thing where, and this is largely our writing process now, where there was just a week where I decided I'm just going to write songs a cappella, no beat, and just write them every day for a week straight. And out of that week, we Like That and False Idols were 2 of those songs. And for the most part, that's our writing process now, is I will write an a cappella song. I'll bring it in. I'll say like this, here's the verses, here's the chorus, make something that works. Let's make something that works for this. And it's by no means over there. It's like, here's the verses, here's the chorus. But then once the guys get a hold of it, things get cut, things get shifted, things get rewritten. And that's how it should be. On occasion, I'd say some amount of the time too, it'll start with an instrumental beat or something that Sorrow makes, or a riff that Chavo makes, and then we'll build from there. But for the songs that have been released so far, most of them have just been written in that a cappella format, and then we sort of build the music around them.
It was just kind of funny because I was thinking about how sort of ironic it is that you have a song called Shadowbox on the collection you put out with RZA.
Yeah, for sure. That I think that sort of played into why we put it on volume 2 as opposed to the other ones, because you know what I mean, Shadowbox and all that. But that was a big thing. We brought that up. RZA heard that song the night that he came in and recorded it, and he loved, like, he was talking about getting on that song as well. He thought it was awesome because he kept saying, he's like, I love what you're doing. He's like, let me hear something that's a little bit more melodic though. So we're like, well, check out Shadowbox, you know? And he was all about it. It's just, we couldn't really, as much as I want multiple RZA features, we kind of got to pick and choose here. We can't just, we can't put RZA on 2 out of 3 songs.
Hey man,
on a
you guys can do a North Kingsley RZA collab.
Hey, look, man, I would love to be a Wu Tang affiliate, but we'll see.
You can be the new Redman.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but thinking as you were saying that you kind of do your stuff where you're just writing a cappella with no beat in mind. Have you have to have seen these Warak videos, right?
No, I don't.
What? Oh man.
No.
Oh, that's right, because you're not on Facebook. Okay, that's probably why you haven't seen these. All right.
What is it?
So basically, it's like this. I guess it's 3. It's these like dudes from like this place called like, I think it's called Warak, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So I mean, it kind of tells you it's like the smallest of the small, basically. But they have these videos. I know you can. I'm pretty sure you can find these on YouTube. Worst case, I'll try to send a link to you when we're done with this. But so it's these guys, and they look kind of, I think one dude's like mixed, but I think it's like a bunch of white dudes in like kind of a ghetto-y area, and they just rap. Like, they just, no beat, no nothing. Like, the one dude always jumps off it. Like, and it has become, like, now there's tropes. Like, as it's been going on, I think most of this whole thing, there's tropes now. But, like, they just stare at their phones and they're like, yeah, so I was blah, 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 and doing this. And, and there's no beat. He hasn't memorized shit. He's just looking at his phone. And then this other taller dude is always hiding somewhere and then just busts out of wherever. And then he's like, yeah, and blah, 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 blah. And very, very recently have they started putting out, like, they put out a song and it had a beat. And you're just like, wow. All right, this isn't that bad. And, like, I don't think lyrically a lot of the shit they're saying is terrible. I've heard way worse. But it's funny to see that these guys have built up this following. Like, I think they drop new tracks, new videos every Monday. And it's kind of funny. A lot of people, I think a lot of it is a joke. And I think I'm very convinced that they understand that it's a fucking joke, and they're just playing so far into it that it's almost like become performance art of a sorts. But I was gonna say, if you had seen that, what was your reaction to it? Just because it's been one of the weird, I don't want to call it viral because I don't think anything's happened so big that it's gone completely viral, but it's one of the few things, like, I knew a dude who lives in Rhode Island, he shared it, and then, like, he would share them every Monday, and then I'd start noticing other people sharing it, and then it just kind of has become this thing where it's like, if you're kind of in the know, then you are, and I'm interested to see if it turns into a thing where it gets some legit buzz behind it, because it's like, each video is pulling in hundreds of thousands of views and so forth, and, like, their one video that has, like, production for real, like, it's a legit music video and so forth, looks really good, and the beat's not bad, and they actually sound good, like riding over a beat. And it's one of those where you're like, I've seen weirder shit happen in the music industry where these kind of things become something. And, could it be the next William Hung where it's a fucking joke and everyone's in on the joke other than the dude? Who knows? Could it be something where, this was all a fucking joke and we were sort of like yourself a little bit, where it's like, this is a fucking joke and we just had fun doing it, and then it just happened to catch on, and then a label signed us because, hey, you guys are generating all of this content and all these views by yourself, let's try to do something and basically capitalize on what you're doing, but give you the next phase of this process. And it's some of those kind of things where I don't think sometimes people realize how far you can take something if you just have the drive and commitment to do it. And I think that's half of it. A lot of times is just sticking to it.
Definitely. And I think you're right as far as things like that have a chance to get big. Like you've seen Stranger Things, but especially in today's day and age, this sort of idea of like meme rap is huge, right? So these guys that I haven't seen any of these videos, but if these guys are out doing these sort of parody like joke rap things, that'll get big just from kids and stuff sharing it online and thinking it's funny, right? I mean, that's not far off from like 6ix9ine.
No.
You know,
no.
And look how big he got, you know? So it's sort of, it's almost a marketing technique at this point to do just crazy shit like that, you know?
Well, I think that's kind of the interesting thing in a lot of this is, you know, like I was sort of getting at earlier with, you know, the where do you guys want to go and, you know, the different lanes maybe that you can take this. I think you have to entertain those ideas from the jump. You have to have that conversation about what is your goal? What do you want to do with this? How far are you willing to take it? And how do we get there? And, you know, something like this War Act shit, like, it's a fucking joke to a lot of people. But if you keep giving them the thing every Monday, and then you start noticing, like, oh, they thought it was funny when I jumped off of this thing, when I'm always going to jump off of something, so it becomes well, where is he jumping off from? Or the other dude, like, where's he hiding? And then you start noticing other things, like the other dude that raps, like, changes his outfit. So, like, then now that's a new trope. And it's just one of those where it's like, if you kind of know what you're doing, or at least become aware enough to see something's happening, and you just kind of feed into it and then go, okay, realistically, how far can we take this? And just kind of have fun doing it, but at least have the business sense to keep moving forward with it, then it's like, I think that's kind of what separates some legit, I use this word kind of loosely, some artists from having more success than those that don't. Because I think if you just do something and have no idea of where you're going, then you have no idea how to mark what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to think about, like you said, what your goal is and how you plan on selling what you're doing, and how what you're doing can actually impact the public. It's like someone like Immortal Technique, right? That dude has just got bars for days, and he's great, but he's never going to be huge.
No,
because he's not giving you something that you can just sort of tune out to, or he's sort of such an uncompromising artist that it's like, that guy is a rapper's rapper. You know what I mean? Like, I will listen to Immortal Technique all day and just be like, wow, this dude is the best. But he's never going to catch on a grand scale like that. Something like this meme rap thing that you're describing is something that'll catch on. And I know Immortal Technique's like a little bit of a dated reference at this point, you know, but there's just similar things like that. It's rare that artists who are that interested in sort of being that artsy can break through on a higher level. I mean, we've had conversations throughout the lifespan of North Kingsley at this point over the last I know we've only been out since August, but we've been doing this for like 2.5 years,
right?
Where there's been a lot of talks of just like, Ray, you can't do verses for, 32 bars at a time and like expect people to really be into it. And even like with something like Volume 1 versus Volume 2, I think Volume 2 is a better album for that, or better EP for that, because on Volume 1, it's a lot of like heady, high concept, a lot of bars and stuff. And I love that. And I think people love that. But I think something like Rifle and Thought, which is very purposely a repetitive kind of thing like that, but still has the kind of high concept that I'm looking for in something, I think that's a better song and something better poised for people to listen to,
Well, it's kind of funny. I was talking to someone the other day. Actually, I randomly joined someone's Instagram live thing, and we just were talking about a bunch of different shit. And it's one of the first times I've actually said this out loud, and I was like, fuck, I guess that kind of is how this person's career has really gone. And I'll pose the question right away, so as I get to the end, you can answer this question. But, where do you see yourself kind of going, since you're dropping stuff that's been done for so long versus where you're already doing stuff now? But kind of getting to the point, I was talking about Jay-Z. Jay-Z is one of my favorite rappers. for a very long time. But I said, the thing that I've always admired about Jay-Z's career is, he's grown as a lyricist and as a person. So, you have Reasonable Doubt Volume 1, Volume 2, and that's kind of the come up. Volume 3, Black Album, sort of that American Gangster record, because you got to throw that in there somewhere. Basically that's kind of the man growing up, and kind of I'm getting away from my youthful indiscretions and kind of becoming this man who gets away from the streets and gets away from making, foolish mistakes and so forth, and, the struggle and the come up, to basically, now I got it. So now I'm talking about like the things I'm doing now with my wealth and my knowledge that I've gained, to now where you're looking at, like 444, and it's kind of, it really paints a full narrative of a person growing from basically a child to a man that, is kind of thinking more like, I don't have as much time as I did 20 some odd years ago. Like, I kind of got to think about like the legacy I'm going to leave behind, and the things that will make me a better person. And it was one of the first times I've really kind of put all that together in the course of listening to this person's career, for 20 some odd years, where I feel like that's a trapping of a lot of people, where it's like, sometimes Drake kind of talks about the come up, and you're like, dude, you don't have a come up anymore. Like, your come up was like done on Take Care. Like, stop talking about your come up. Or even, a little bit of The Weeknd too, where it's like, you can't be talking about a come up 10 years later where you're still like, where you're at the top of the fucking game. Like, that's not how it is. You can either brag about what you fucking have, or go on beyond that, but you can't talk about the struggle, because there is no fucking struggle. Not like it used to be. So do you see yourself with what you have done, and kind of, since you're so far ahead basically of what we're going to hear, do you think you have kind of done the same thing lyrically?
So the reason that's an interesting question to me is I made a point of before anything we dropped, before Volume 1 came out, and I think we talked about this before. Volume 1 was supposed to come out in like April.
Yeah.
But then everything happened with the lockdowns and all that. Before April, I made a point of writing an entire second album, because I thought, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, I think regardless of what happens, whether or not we drop Volume 1 and it bombs, or it's like really critically well received, there's going to be something that changes in the way that I write from having the immediate feedback. You know what I mean? So I made a point of completely writing another album before we even put that music out, because I was worried about the way that might alter my writing process. Now, since we've had music out, I can say for a fact that it has altered my writing process, and I don't know how many songs we would use from before we dropped Volume 1, because like I said earlier, we've got like 80 some songs that we're just not using, right? So I don't know how many of those songs we're actually going to use, but I do think the public feedback about what North Kingsley's doing, and what I can see people are into more than other things, has definitely, I'd like to think, elevated the way that I'm writing something. I'm definitely not in the position of like, oh, can't talk about the come up anymore, because trust me, we're still on the come up. And I don't think, if you listen to the content of North Kingsley stuff, that was never really a focus of what we're talking about anyway, So I was certainly worried before we dropped music that it would alter my writing process in a negative way, where I would somehow be referencing stuff in what we're writing about people's reactions to what we've put out. And I've made sort of a rule for myself not to do that. But on the tip of evolving as an artist, I think that that's completely necessary. And we've had plenty of talks as a band of where we want to go from here, and what we should do. So it's like when I say, like, I'm going to be in the studio tonight, like no one's ever going to hear the thing that I'm working on tonight, but it's like we're not stopping, So Friday, 4 days ago, or whatever today's, 4 days ago, Sorrow had just left town and Shavo wasn't going into the studio, and I was like, oh sweet, day off, like I'm just going to stay home and try to just play Cyberpunk. But I had this idea for a song, because we had all these discussions about what if we tried to go in this certain lane, or tried to do our take on what this version of hip hop is. And I was like racking my brain about not wanting to sell out in that way, but at the same time, we need to gain whatever traction we can, so we can continue to make the music that we actually do love. So I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to sell out. If I was going to do something like that, this is how I'm going to do it. And I just went into the studio by myself and just spent the day in there. Like, I'm going to write this song, and these are my rules. I have to say this thing. I have to do this thing in the middle of the song, and this is what's going to happen. And it turned out to be something that I really love, that I'm super excited for the other guys to work on and everything like that. So, I think we're consciously evolving as a band, because I think that that's necessary. So if you use like the Jay-Z comparison, it's 444 is an excellent album, but before that was like Magna Carta, which was so clearly let me just try to do pop rap shit right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And some of those songs are good, but you're never going to put Magna Carta in a tier list of Jay-Z albums.
It's right up there with Blueprint 3.
Yes, when so when 444 came out, it was like wow, this is dope. But again, this is a long-winded thing, but I do think you need to evolve. But in the words of Jay-Z, since you referenced him, they say they want the old stuff, buy the old album. That's what it is. So I think I'm content in the fact that we've established that we can do these really politically and socially aware sort of long form verses and stuff like that. And that was really important for me to establish, but I don't think it's something for the rest of my life that I want to hammer over people's heads, especially if it's not something that I'm actually feeling. I don't want to find myself in the position of, oh, this is what people expect from North Kingsley, so this is what I have to do. Let me just get angry about something that I'm not angry about. I just want to be true. Whatever we're doing, I want to be true about it, and I think we should move with the times and we should evolve, but we should never sort of just look at what other people are doing and say, let's do that.
Right.
I think that would be completely shooting ourselves in the foot, which is why I think that comparison of like rap is sort of like hair metal right now, and they're waiting for grunge to come out is an apt comparison, at least for us, because it's like we just need to stay in our own lane, and we've established already that people like what we're doing. We just need to keep doing it, and people will continue to follow along with that.
Kind of one of the last questions I have for you, because I know you got to get ready to go, and then you can plug your socials and all that kind of stuff as well. How, because obviously with North Kingsley, unapologetically, most people are probably checking out because of Chavo and the association to system. Yep. So, definitely. With your like Instagram videos and stuff that you make, how has the reaction been to those kind of things? I mean, I think I'm a little bit older than you. I think we established on the first one, but it fits in that really fucked up like CKY era, like where it's just jump cuts, random shit makes no fucking sense. Like your one with like the cutting out of Sorrow's face and putting on a tape beard and all that shit. Like, that to a lot of people might be like, what the fuck? What is that? That's not even funny. I look at that and I'm like, holy shit, that's okay. I understand this, and this is funny as shit. To even now having Shabo kind of getting involved with it, and your comments kind of on some of the stuff where it's basically poking fun at all of you. Like you take the music seriously, but the rest of it is all up for to being poked fun at. Yeah. Do a lot of people not understand that, and or have you found that more people maybe aren't necessarily checking out the music, but really just kind of getting into that and then be like, oh, I finally checked out a song the other day and it actually is pretty good?
So I think it's more the latter. I think it's more people are into those little short videos and us on a personality standpoint, and then they look at the videos. This was another thing that before Volume 1 dropped I wanted to do. I was just like, I think it would be funny to just sort of make these funny videos. I just think it would be fun. And initially, right off the bat, I did a couple just by myself, and I showed him to Shavo. He's like, that's hilarious, and he really liked it. So I was like, sweet. And he was like, I want to get involved in that. And I was like, awesome, because it's better for me if we do it as a band, you know, like the whole idea of these videos in general sort of feeds back into what you're saying about that, those like rap videos from Rhode Island or whatever. It's just like, I think people are into these sort of weird, memey, funny things, right? And I like it. So I told the guys back then, I was like, you know, I sort of just want to be like as serious as I can be on the mic, but anywhere else, I'm just going to be myself. And like, I'm not that serious of a guy. And I write these weird comedy skits and I do those things. So some days we'll go into the studio and I'll just be like, all right, guys, I wrote like 5 skits. So we gotta get these done and get them going. And initially I think people were kind of worried about what the reaction was going to be to the skits because they're so different than the music, you know, it's such a different thing. But people tend to love them. Like I love reading the comments on the skits where people are just like, oh my God, you guys need your own show and shit like that. That to me is good. And it's sort of, it's when we're in the situation like we are, where there's a pandemic and we can't go out and play shows and build a fan base that way, the doing things like this with these skits and whatever is sort of the thing to do. And I'm cool with it. Like we talked before about how like I'm not a social media guy. So like if you look at any of my social media, I'm pretty much making myself look stupid all the time because I just don't care about any of this stuff, right? Like I'm not gonna take this seriously and play into that thing because I just don't care, and I don't want to come off like someone trying to curate an Instagram. So I'm like photoshopping myself into fucking movie posters and just doing dumb stuff where I look terrible. So I love doing the skits, and I love that people are reacting well to them, and I'm definitely finding people are looking at North Kingsley because of the skits, because they get shared around and stuff, and there's growth from there, and then they'll check out the music and they'll like that. There's definitely more people that have checked out the music because they want to hear the music and right. because of Shavo and things like that. But the skits are working really well as far as people coming to look at what the band's actually doing and sort of getting a feel for who we actually are as people. I would hate to be pigeonholed as someone who's just super serious all the time, because I'm just not, you know?
By the way, I was gonna send this. Maybe I did. Sometimes I get drunk and send things to people and I completely forget. But I was gonna say I saw a beer, and it was called "Do It for the Graham," GRAHM.
Oh,
it's a graham cracker. Okay, I did. Okay, it was a graham cracker beer, and I was like,
yeah, no, I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah. Lastly, where can everyone find you and or the band online?
So the band is at North Kingsley on Instagram and pretty much everything else, I think. And we're on Spotify, iTunes, you know, the whole gamut. We're on YouTube. Check out our False Idols music video. I am at Ray Hawthorne with an underscore afterwards. But if you come check out my page, I'm just going to be looking stupid the whole time. So that's what it is.
Well, thanks for coming on again. And I guess whenever Volume 3 drops, we'll have to do this again. It's always fun, just bullshitting. Need to get you on one of our live things we do whenever you're not busy in the studio, which I think is sounds like every day.
We're definitely in the studio more than we need to be. I feel like at a certain point we're beating a dead horse, but it's there's a lot of creative outlet, and I just don't want to. I think we have a big opportunity right now, and I don't want to ever look back and say like, well, if I had just worked a little bit harder, it could have gone. You know? If I had just done one more Batman skit, it could have worked.
Well, fair enough. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and looking forward to hearing whatever you do in the studio today in about a year and a half.
Sounds good. Very accurate.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, man.
All right, thanks, man.
That fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks, but you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.